Welcome to Denver Startup Week. I'm Tammy Dorr, President and CEO of the Downtown Denver Partnership and co-chair of Denver Startup Week. This year marks the 10-year anniversary of Denver Startup Week. DSW has been the catalyst for lots of change over the past decade. And this week, we're coming together to celebrate the past and dream big for the future. We are able to bring Denver Startup Week to this community thanks to our 2021 sponsors. Thank you to our HQ and title sponsor, Amazon, and our title sponsors whose leadership makes this week come to life. Capital One Cafe, Downtown Denver Partnership, Fluid Truck, Hotel Engine, and WeWork. And our track sponsors who have made all of the great content you're hearing today possible, our founder track sponsor, Kickstart, growth track sponsor, Friday Health Plans, developer track sponsor, Quizlet, product track sponsor, Palantir, our designer track sponsor, Battery 621, and the Public Works, people track sponsor, Exactly, and spotlight event sponsor, Strat Labs. Our headline event sponsors are bringing the excitement to the week. Thank you to B-Side Fund, Colorado Public Radio, Comcast, Coors Brewing, Denver Pavilions, Entrepreneurship at the University of Denver, JP Morgan Chase, Method, Moss Adams, Pi Insurance, Promontory Mortgage, Path, Southwest, Tattered Cover, and VF Venture Foundry. Finally, thank you to our partner and member sponsors, all listed on the screen. Please say thank you to these companies as you enjoy our hybrid Denver Startup Week. And don't forget, use the hashtag DenStartupWeek to share your experiences and moments of inspiration on social media. Have a great week.
Hello, I'm Sal Gentili, CEO of Friday Health Plans, and we're proud to sponsor the growth track this year at Denver Startup Week. We're a company that just entered a rapid growth phase, so we felt it was particularly appropriate. When my business partner and I started Friday Health Plans 5 years ago, we knew we wanted to create a company that catered to people who bought their own health insurance. The Affordable Care Act was just getting going, and we saw an opportunity to serve a brand new market of health insurance consumers. Independent consultants, startup groups, gig workers, service industry workers, designers, creators, and other independent professionals, like many of you here today. We knew that if we built a health plan that was simple to buy, easy to use, had great customer service, and most of all was affordable, we could compete against the big insurance plans who only focus on serving big companies. After spending 5 years getting into the Colorado market and completing a successful proof of concept, we successfully closed a $50 million round of growth funding earlier this year. We're now about to expand to 3 additional states later this year, hire more than 400 employees to support our growth, and eventually be in more than 10 states by 2025. I wish each of you good luck in your startup and growth pursuits. And as you think about your upcoming health insurance needs, I hope you consider fellow growing startup Friday Health Plans. Open enrollment starts November 1st. Check us out at fridayhealthplans.com.
Hello everyone, welcome to Denver Startup Week. I'm Jake Cohen, the Growth Track Chair and member of the Denver Startup Week Organizing Committee. Thank you for joining us for the 10th anniversary of Denver Startup Week. At Denver Startup Week, we strive to make all of our sessions a space where attendees can connect, learn, and grow. Regardless of age, gender identity, gender expression, race, ability, or sexual orientation. A special thank you to our sponsors for their support in helping us to keep Denver Startup Week free and accessible for all. Thank you for joining us and have a great week.
All right, nothing like being introduced by yourself. I'm Jake Cohen, the chair of the Denver Startup Week growth track. And today we have Courtney Boyd Myers, who stumbled on the challenge of commercializing ocean farming and building a brand around it. AKUA, one of the most interesting and fast-growing food brands. Hi, Courtney.
Hey, thanks so much for having me, Jake. And I thought you did great on that diversity and inclusion intro. It's important to have. So excited to be here, and I know how tough it's been with the hybrid setup. So I hope we can make this session wicked awesome despite it.
Perfect. So starting to hear some of that Northeastern already.
Totally.
So let's just kick things off. So you're turning kelp into food. So tell us about the idea of turning sea greens into food and where it came from.
I will. Let me just turn off my self view. And if you guys haven't learned this trick yet, it's like a massage for your brain. The second you turn it off, you're like no longer like looking at yourself. It's awesome. So that's my hot tip. Yeah. So ocean farming, I guess, let me just define that, I mean, thinking about the way that we grow vegetables on land, it's very much like growing sea vegetables in the ocean. And it's a practice of growing food that people have done for thousands of years. Seaweeds and eating seaweeds in general is something that's been done for thousands of years. And it's sort of just become a lost part of our culinary culture here in the Western world. So we are not only bringing ocean farming as a practice to the US coastlines, we are bringing seaweed as a food to the US as well. So lots of newness here, which is what makes it exciting, but also challenging.
I know you picked a real challenge of all the food trends to bring to America, whether it's like quinoa or all these other options. Like you took the thing that like kids freak out when they're in the ocean and it touches them. So definitely a big challenge there.
But Jake, I think I was a weirdo kid when I used to swim in the ocean. I was like a little mermaid, just total fan. And so I used to put seaweed in my hair. I used to eat seaweed right out of the ocean. I used to pretend it was a mustache. So I think, I'm a special weirdo. And definitely not every kid is afraid of seaweed when they're in the water.
So true ocean food innovator since childhood.
Yeah, exactly. Ocean advocate for sure. And always wanted to be a mermaid.
Totally. So, and I think really a big challenge, right, is I think most Americans are really, maybe nori is about our extent of seaweed or sea greens exposure. So
Definitely.
Really a whole world to open up.
Yeah. So some interesting stats. So 98% of the seaweed that's on the market today is from Asia. And the vast majority of that are these prepackaged nori sheets that are like a little salty. They're almost for me like kind of an awkward snack because it's like eating a sheet. I like to like wrap things with them and then they break. So they're not the ideal food, and they definitely leave you feeling really hungry and not very satiated. But they are, an awesome kind of breaking the door down on getting people to eat more seaweed. And when you look at those nori sheets as a food category, when we first launched, they were growing 30% year over year. So it's just tremendous growth. And clearly there was an appetite for eating seaweed when those hit the market.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, they make me feel really good about myself. So I appreciate that. There's definitely my intro into sea greens as a category. Tell us a little bit more about your intro. I understand it kind of a friend introduced you into the ocean aquaculture world.
Yeah, exactly. Aquaculture world. So I grew up with this awesome friend of mine named Brendan Coffey, who's actually our board director right now. And he helped start a nonprofit called Green Wave. And there's an amazing film. It's called The Ocean Solution that Patagonia just filmed on Green Wave's work. It's really tremendous. It's 14 minutes. If you haven't seen it, definitely Google that, The Ocean Solution. And I was, I spent my career in journalism and I'm a born and bred community builder. I worked at a company called Summit for a long time. We bought Powder Mountain in Utah, moved out there, was hosting events that are often described as like a Burning Man meets Davos. So a lot of fun and always surrounded by really inspiring entrepreneurs. And I really wanted to start a business. And the things that were near and dear to my heart at the time and still are, making food that is nourishing and healthy for the people that I love, and making food that is healthy and nourishing for the planet that I love. And I just saw those things as so connected. And when a friend said, "Hey, do you want to come visit this regenerative ocean farm in Connecticut, not too far from where we grew up?" I thought, God, I've always loved seaweed. I'd love to see what that looks like. And so, yeah, I took a trip up to around New Haven, Connecticut, ate a piece of kelp off a rope on a boat, and I've been hooked ever since.
I don't know if that was a bad ocean pun, but I like the hooked reference.
It definitely was.
Yeah, so tell us, so you mentioned food that's nourishing is really important to us. Before this panel, you had mentioned to me that's a really important part of this equation for you. It's really how we eat and what we eat. And, I'd love to hear more about that story and those roots, because I think you come at this from a non-typical background.
Yeah. So growing up, I was the kid that, like, if my mom fed me bacon, I called it pig. And when they, fed us steak, I called it cow. And I used to chop it up into really little pieces and drown it in ketchup, because that was the only way that I really liked to eat steak. I never enjoyed it. And I say that because I know a lot of people really enjoy eating steak. And so, being vegan and vegetarian, I really believe is maybe not for everyone. So I try not to like push that on people. I really do believe, though, that eating more plants is super important, both for people's health and for, your food print, as we call it. And my dad growing up was just an amazing food marketer. So he created like Chester the Cheeto, and he worked at Frito-Lay, and he's VP of marketing at Pepsi for years. I remember he came home with like a Michael Jackson jacket because he just shot a commercial with him. And I just, my dad is just one of the smartest people, invented the Burger King Kids Club, but he was marketing the wrong foods. And, he himself had fallen, succumbed basically to the big food marketing of that generation towards baby boomers. And, I've watched him get cancer twice, 2 heart attacks, diabetes, and it's horrible watching someone you love's health decline for what feels like optional reasons, and I feel like a lot of our generation deals with this and fighting our parents on their food choices and other choices too. So yeah, I have a lot of passion and anger a little bit too. And that was a definitely big driver in starting a healthy food company and making products that are actually good for you, that you can eat every day, that you can feed to your kids, and feel really good about buying.
And you were telling me that your new Kelp Burger is such a favorite of yours that you're like eating it for like every meal. It sounds like almost.
Yeah, I mean, I think, as a food founder, and I'm sure there's a lot of food founders out there at this event, you do so much product development. And sometimes, you can get sick of your product. I mean, even if you're the founder of Honey Mamas, which is the best chocolate in the world, I'm sure after a little while, you're like, I don't want to eat any more chocolate. So for, our Kelp burgers, I am really excited. I've been eating them almost every day now for a year and a half. We started trialing them during the pandemic. And I'm finding a lot of new ways to cook with them, which is exciting. And like kelp bolognese is my favorite, and kelp tacos, and I'm going to make a kelp chili soon with our Kelp burger meat. So yeah, just definitely being creative. But yeah, after this talk, I'm going to go with my parents and have a new sample, because we're always doing product development and trying to improve the product from so many different perspectives.
Tell us a little bit about that product development, because I know we have a lot of CPG companies in Denver, and it's a really crucial part of any CPG company is how they get to market, how they develop product. Tell us about that journey for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think the really hard thing about developing a food product that maybe no one tells you when you start is making a product in a kitchen, or even a commercial kitchen, is very different than making a product in like a big manufacturer. So like making like 1,000 kelp burgers is really easy. Making 100,000 kelp burgers is really hard. And you might need to change your recipe, and you will certainly have to change your process as you scale up. So that's kind of like why we're still doing product development on the Kelp burger, even though it's been in market, secretly for a year and publicly for a few months. So, for us, it's also about, maintaining exact product quality and nutrition, but also lowering cost of goods, finding suppliers who will give us price breaks on volume, because our product's not cheap. It's very hard to launch with a cheap product that's good for you. And, of course, you always want to bring the price down over time so that more people can afford to buy your product. And so, yeah, it's been, we've worked with food scientists, some great, some not so great. I mean, I really feel like we've lit about $40,000 on fire working with some of the food scientists in the past. We've got a great one now. And what I love about him is like his communication skills are amazing. He texts, he calls, he emails, and it can be really hard to find someone with great communication skills who's also like, a primo chef or an amazing food scientist, because these guys and women are normally so heads down in their kitchen. And communication is super important, and so we're happy now, but it definitely took a kissing a lot of frogs to get here.
And so what's that process look like from the food scientist to the package? Like, are you doing all the manufacturing yourself? Is there a partner involved in that?
Yep, we work with an amazing partner down in Atlanta. Actually, we were producing everything up in Portland, Maine, and we outgrew that facility pretty quickly. We work with a co-manufacturer, and that's definitely part of the struggle is, negotiating with them on price to get the, just the tolling costs down and things like that. So the product, I'd say all of the ingredients except for our extra virgin olive oil are from the United States. So having local supply chains is not just, good for our story and our brand, but really important during crazy times like COVID, because, we weren't affected about shipping things from overseas, like a lot of brands were. And the kelp is all from Maine in the US and processed up in Maine. And then the kelp gets shipped down with all of our other ingredients to Atlanta, where the kelp burgers get made. They get boxed up and they get shipped to a warehouse in New Jersey, which is where we're shipping all of our product to retailers and to direct to consumer out of.
And for those of us in Denver, Courtney was telling me that the kelp is seasonal, and I believe it's harvested in April and May, right?
Yeah. So what's so cool about kelp farming for places like Maine is it's the opposite season of lobster. So I don't know the exact stats, but like a huge amount of like Maine's GDP is from lobster. It's just like, it's what a lot of people in that state, especially, like the farmers and fishermen make money off of. And so if they can almost double their income by working the opposite season, so if lobster's summer, kelp's winter, and they're making that money off of the boats and the buoys that they already have, it's win-win. It can be the difference of sending your kid to college or not. So it can have a huge economic impact. And that's why, we only buy from farmer-owned farms. That's really important to us. In fact, all of the farms that we're buying from right now are female farmer-owned, which is especially cool. Happy to support that. And they plant. So there's a really cool process of how to grow kelp. Essentially, the divers will go out in about a month and find a pregnant mama kelp. And she's got this really thick sorus tissue around her belly. You can see the spores in there. You take her into a tank, you cut her open, the spores come swimming out and they look to attach to something, at which point you have a tank with spools in it. And the spores attach to the spools and they grow, about an inch or two over a month, maybe more. And then those spools are taken out onto an open water farm on ropes and extended. And then over a 6-month growing period, that kelp will grow up to 7 or 8 feet. And it's harvested in about late April, early May, usually.
Wow. I got to go to Maine a month ago and I was on a lobster boat, and I feel like I should have been on a kelp boat instead.
No, but you were there during lobster season. So if you go back in March and April, which I don't know why anyone would really want to go to Maine and go out on a boat in March, but you can go see a kelp farm.
Yeah, the Mainers are pretty clear about what the rest of the year looks like. So I might let them enjoy that part of the year.
It's brutal. It's brutal.
I think also one of the really surprising things is just the fact of our oceans really do a lot to take care of our earth, really. And kelp in particular is a really incredible carbon sink, right?
Huge. So kelp is a macroalgae, part of the algae family, and it grows via photosynthesis. So we all remember that from school. Photosynthesis means, sucking in carbon and exhaling oxygen like plants. And so kelp is just the same, but it does it underwater. And so the kelp and because it grows so fast, we're talking over a foot a month, which is different than any tree, that you would know, maybe bamboo. It's very powerful at sequestering carbon and filtering nitrogen. It actually sequesters about 20 times the amount of carbon from the ocean as a land-based plant does on land. And so you see in these areas around these kelp farms, deacidification. And what that looks like is like shellfish are having thicker shells, and you're noticing increased biodiversity around these farms. Species that haven't been to Maine's coastlines in a decade are coming back and feeling like, okay, this is a more habitable place. And so if you extend like these small scale farms that we have right now, and you think about like the growth of this industry, these bigger kelp farms sucking in more carbon, a lot of scientists have gone so far to say that, a kelp farm the size of the Amazon rainforest could literally reverse rising sea temperatures, which is really cool. Now, kelp farming is just one tool in the toolbox. There's so many things that have to happen for us to turn the tide on what's going on, but it's a very important tool. And we're excited to be, our small part in that.
Well, and I have to think even beyond the climate change, when you look at sustainability, like there's only so much land for farming, and there's a lot of ocean to grow food in if we're willing to accept it.
100%. And so one of the things that we just are so obsessed with is this idea that we can grow abundant, nutrient-dense food without using fresh water and without using dry land, which almost everything you and I have eaten or drank today relies on. And so there's some amazing stats that the World Bank has put out. Just as an example, if we were to farm only 5% of the farmable water in the United States, we would create 50 million new jobs extended from those farms. When we're talking farmers, processors, the drivers, the brands, et cetera. So yeah, it could have a huge economic impact in such a positive way.
Yeah, and also I just remembered the lobsters in Maine are actually, they're having a really terrible season. And a lot of them think it's from climate change, which is, your lobstermen aren't the first people you would think of talking to you about climate change, just given who they are. And
yeah.
They're really feeling it. So having those kelp farms nearby is probably, a really important step in restoring that ocean for them.
Farmers are the most important people to talk to about climate change, and I think it's why we've seen a lot of fishermen turn to ocean farming, because they see the, dwindling fish stocks from this just aggressive overhunting and, everything we've seen in Seaspiracy. It's horrible. And to sort of farm a beautiful plant like kelp, it doesn't swim away. It is just the right type of aquaculture. Fish farming has gotten such a bad rep because it's gross. There's good ways to fish farm. I'm not slamming it completely, but there's so many bad fish farms out there. And it's because, like, why does a fish want to be farmed? Any more than a pig wants to be killed. It's just, it's not farming, that's hunting. And we've just sort of messily combined the two.
Yeah, there was a time when shooting a fish in a barrel was like a rare expression, not the way
yeah
born. But yeah, no, it's sorry, I could nerd out about this climate and the ocean and stuff, and here we are in Colorado, just hoping it'll rain sometimes. But
and hoping you get snow this winter, right?
Oh man, boy, do we need it for our skiing and for our drinking and our agriculture, and to keep the fires away too. Which brings us back to the CO2 absorption and sequestration. So as much as I could talk about that forever, I do want to bring us to community, because I know at Denver Startup Week, this is very core to who we are. We're always talking about, bringing communities together and what the power of community. It seems a lot like it's part of your story throughout. Is anytime you need something, there's a community to be created there. Tell us more about that and your journey of in creating communities.
Absolutely. I mean, I was, a little kid. I moved to a new town. I remember going on AOL, searching for the year I was born and the kids that identified as like living in that town. And I invited them all to a party, like the very first weekend I moved there. And that was like my group of friends. And I've always, sort of loved this idea, whether, it's as a kid hosting a pool party or an adult hosting a dinner party, of just gathering people around a table when I need something, and providing that experience of the dinner and the curation of the dinner as the gift. And eventually, like, it comes back around because of those people that I've gathered are now part of my network in life. So I was in tech and startups. Before that, I was a journalist writing about tech and startups. And I built an incredible community of the people that I wrote about. I was a very nice journalist. I didn't do too many takedown pieces, and ended up, creating a lot of goodwill from that. Went into an organization called Summit, where we bought a mountain in Utah, Powder Mountain, and we, hosting these amazing events, and just, again, surrounding myself with just incredible people and building that community, and just going so out of my way every day to help others, because I knew, that's what really networking is about. It's building a net so that, you can catch whatever you need later in life, or that net that you can fall back on. And so as I look at the way of community building with AKUA, when we first launched the company, we did a Kickstarter, and we had 1,200 people that backed the company and got rewards. As we headed into the pandemic, we were doing product development on the Kelp Burger. We couldn't host dinner parties like we did with the jerky and get people's feedback in person. So we launched the Kelp Beta Burger Club, and with 1,000 customers over 6 months, did product development. So every 2 weeks, they would get samples, they'd send them back. We'd get that feedback. It was just awesome. And they were so excited to get things in their kitchen at that point, because we were all stuck inside. And so fundraising was really tough during the pandemic. I'm sure a lot of people watching this were, dealing with that as well. It was horrible for us. And so we had this new product to launch. We had to raise some pivot funding. And so we turned to equity crowdfunding. And we raised the $1 million cap within just a few months. And again, just like leaning into our core community and growing through word of mouth through that. There's a direct to consumer that everyone talks about. We like to talk about direct to community. It's how we build our product development. It's how we launch products, it's how we scale our sales. And it's just been so core to who I am and how AKUA has had success.
Awesome. Love that. Tell us more about the crowdfunding journey. I know that's one that kind of huge hot topic these days. There's probably people with a lot of questions. What was that journey like? How did you pick a partner? Tell us more.
Yeah. And I actually wrote an article called How to Rock a Republic campaign. And so if anyone, wants all my tips, I wrote them all down there, and it's just amazing. But yeah, we had Start Engine approach us. We had Republic approach us. I am not someone who responds very well to salesy pitches or emails, and Republic was not like that at all. They were just approached me as a friend, and it was just a great experience. I'm still very close with everyone on the Republic team and continue to give back and refer people. So as we looked at it, we also looked at like a couple metrics. I think it's like Alexa. You can like go on, and I'm confused though, because that used to be a service so you could monitor web traffic, and then I think Amazon bought it, but it still does it. So I don't know. But anyway, we would, monitor the data, and Start Engine might have a little bit more traffic than Republic, but Republic had like enormous time on site metrics, like 3x what Start Engine did. So I thought, okay, that's interesting. And I preferred the UI on Republic, and always did. So I could see our campaign on Republic. What's so cool about, either of these platforms are really good for this is like, and 90% of the funding you raise is not through your network. It's through the Republic network or the Start Engine network. And so a lot of people are like, I don't want to raise money on these platforms because they take a fee. And it's like, well, they deserve the fee. They're bringing all this money and attention to your brand. And of course, you're bringing new investors to their platform and they're making a cut. So it's just a very win-win situation. I'm a huge fan of equity crowdfunding. We doubled our sales during our campaign, got so much attention, brought in opportunities like meeting you, Jake, which is great, and I mean, we still have like just every few days emails from our investors from Republic, like offering to help. And I feel like the 2,200 investors we've brought under, our, into our family under the fold are just like an army out there fighting for us to succeed in the world. So it's priceless.
Yeah, that is definitely how I got introduced to Courtney, really, or at least had an introduction. We actually talked first on the Republic platform. I got my free sample of hibachi teriyaki, which is my favorite kelp jerky flavor, through actually investing in the crowd equity, because just really, well, to be honest, I fell in love with the concept of just kelp farming. I had no idea that I was actually going to really like my teriyaki jerky and soon to be burger. But no, it is a great opener and a really good way to really create those ambassadors, right?
Huge. Yeah. And word of mouth is everything in, a food business. And there's a double entendre there, of course. And so, all these people who are trying our products, who are investors, go out and tell people to buy the products, and everyone has discount codes. And it's just been, a really beautiful ecosystem we've built. And so for anyone out there, I think you should read the Republic post I wrote, but it does require having your own community first. Like, you can't just launch to a mailing list of 0 and a social media following of 0 and expect magic to happen. You do have to also be an interesting, viable business with revenue, because these are people who are looking at this as an investment, and their experience might not be so much venture, but it might be more like public market investing. And so they're really looking at your company, and sometimes they don't always understand liquidity. Like, we had an investor DM us on Instagram. They're like, all right, so when do I make my money back? And I'm like, I don't know, dude, like 5 to 7 years. Like, you're in for the journey, like strap in. And so, it is a lot of education too, as part of this, which, you remember these discussion sections on these pages are just crazy, and it's a lot of time and energy, but definitely worthwhile.
How did you go about deciding like what your cap would be, and looking at those numbers? Was that something you do with the Republic team, or you work on with your team?
Yeah, you do it with the Republic team, but at the end of the day, that is 100% your decision as a founder. It's your campaign. And that's actually a really cool lever for companies. I would recommend always doing a Republic or Start Engine campaign before you have to do like a priced round. So we were able to choose that $7 million cap. And then as we went into our priced round after, we could choose a higher cap, and that was really awesome. I think if we had done a priced round, I mean, I guess it could work either way, but I think it really helped us get the valuation we wanted in our private round that we closed a few months later, to be able to set that $7 million precedent on our equity crowdfund.
Is that like crowdfunding investment community something that was also like important to leverage with the actual investors themselves, or was it more just your sales proved enough?
I mean, our sales were, we were doing maybe like 50K in sales a month. And so not really justifiable for a $7 million cap, or what we did in our private round, which is a $10 million valuation. But I think, plant-based food companies are fetching way more than that. I mean, we see companies like Meaty raise like 70 million pre-revenue. So like, whether I'm a white guy from San Francisco or not, like, I'm not like being that obnoxious on what we're doing. We have revenue, we're scaling and growing. And I think this is just a funny conversation about valuations, right? Today you just see crazy overblown valuations, and then you see these companies that go on Shark Tank and have their valuations like, slashed, and you take it anyway because it's a celebrity, and it's just, everything's so relative. I feel like, we were really, hitting a nice kind of happy medium between, okay, this is aggressive, but it's not like obnoxious.
Yeah. Well, and I think, just from a personal aspect, like, any of us that do invest money, like a lot of us want sustainable businesses to invest in. So I think you're just more likely to get a little bit of a higher valuation if there's some real belief in value alignment there.
Exactly. Yeah, definitely. And I think as we look at the company itself, yes, it's a plant-based food product. Yes, there's a lot of them out there, but like truly, like not a lot of companies out there are building like an entirely new food category within the natural food space, like around seagreens. And so I think that there's just a big opportunity to be that, kind of first mover in that space.
Yeah, this is, you say it like it's so small, but it really is. It's a really big potential space. Like,
yeah, I mean, it's the global seaweed market is in like I think it's somewhere between like 30 and 35 billion right now. And Asia just has, the most of that. So if US can, you can take 1% of that, 3 billion, we can be like, part of that, then great.
Yeah, what a lovely little surprise. No, so you sorry, I'm getting the order a little mixed up, but with the jerky came first, right, before the burger. So what went into the decision to launch the jerky first?
Right. So my background being in tech and startups, I knew how to build an online business. I knew how to, put a product on Shopify and run performance marketing around that. But I didn't know how to build out like cold storage and shipping frozen products. And that was all just really daunting to me. So we wanted to start with a product that was shelf stable and easy to ship. I also, when we were building this in 2018, it was when like Crave Jerky sold to Hershey for like 300 million. And jerky in itself was like huge and growing really fast. And you just saw an explosion of meat jerky companies. So I was like, actually, there did not exist at the time. I don't even know if there does today, a high protein, soy-free vegan jerky. I think we're really one of the only vegan jerkies out there that fits that bill. And so as a, pretty much vegan vegetarian myself, I wanted a product that, I don't love eating soy all the time. And I wanted a product that I would want to eat every day. And so we developed the Kelp Jerky, 0 added sugar. All the other jerkies out there have tons of sugar. For better or worse, it has 0 added sugar. I think it could probably use a little sugar, honestly. So we may reformulate it and head more towards the delicious side of the spectrum, but we did okay. I would say that like the jerky is not what's going to make you a return on your investment. It is a product that we will either reformulate or kill, which is really hard because it's like your baby. But it allowed us to sort of learn so many things about the business. Like one, well, obviously you have to make a product that's delicious, and nutritious is like secondary to Americans. And then, the most important thing is you have to make a product that scales from a manufacturing standpoint. And the jerky is really hard to make. Burgers, there's a lot of people in the United States that know how to make burgers. And so we were able to, connect with multiple co-manufacturers in order to do that. So, yeah, I think the burgers are definitely going to be our go big or go home play. And from here, we will do vegan crab cakes and meatballs and sausages and have a lot of fun with that frozen center plate category.
Cakes, like actual ocean products in vegan crab cakes. That's fun.
Exactly. Yeah, that's our next one, which I'm really excited about because investors are always like, are you meat alternative or are you alternate seafood? And I'm gonna be like, both, bitch.
That's awesome. So what did the burger development look like? How long did that take? Like,
we're about to try samples after this, presentation. So it's still going, after a year and a half. I'm sure a lot of people out there can do product development much faster than we can. We took that community-led approach I mentioned earlier, and now we've got this great food scientist who's helping us bring our cogs down and make the product a little firmer, like really hold up on a grill better. Because it was a little soft before, which I really liked, but a lot of people need something a little tougher when they're thinking about burgers. And yeah, I think we're hoping to be somewhat done with product development on this, but you're always learning and you're always collecting feedback and you're always tweaking. And I feel like sometimes food doesn't necessarily get the same opportunity as tech does to have like an alpha and beta launch and then a launch and keep, releasing new versions of the iOS, et cetera. And why can't we do that with food, and especially with a product as complex as a Kelp Burger. It's not like, it's 10 ingredients. It's not like a nut butter where hopefully you can nail that pretty quickly. But yeah, we'll want to move on to the crab cake pretty soon and start doing R&D on that in early 2022, so that we can get that out to our little inner circle, at the very latest for the summer.
And how do you think about going to the market with these products? Like, there's definitely a lot of direct to consumers. Is that the big path forward? Are there, distributor plays, retail direct?
Yeah, no, we just partnered with UNFI. They're the largest natural food distributor with KeHE in the United States. So we're part of their Next program. And they're just, really well known for supporting early emerging brands. It's funny, when we logged on with UNFI, I went on to my app public.com, where I buy my public market stocks. And I kind of I'm not as active this year with public market investing as I was last year, because last year was like so crazy and fun to do it. And I was like, I'm just gonna, put some money in UNFI because we're celebrating this. And unfortunately, I only put like, $50, and it went up 30% in like a week. I was like, I should have put like 3,000 in, but whatever. But yeah, UNFI is great. And we are launching in over 100 stores in New York within the next couple weeks. So that's going to be really big for us. We've hired sampling teams, merchandising teams, brokers, and we have a sales team. And between the sales team, the merchandisers, that's $20K a month. The merchandisers are, another like 1.5. And then the sampling teams are probably like $2K. So it's costing us, quite a bit of cash to like get into retail. Let's just call it like $25K a month. And we're looking at like probably making $10K a month to start. So like retail's tough and you lose money as you start up, and it's a game of scale. We are submitted to Whole Foods. If everything goes according to plan from our 10-1 submission, we will be on shelves nationally in Whole Foods in July 2022. So it takes just a long time to get in with these behemoths. But obviously, once you're in a store like that, that's when you start to see, the numbers really working for you.
And I've heard the freezer aisle is like the toughest of all of them, right?
Yeah. So we do want to be able to be what's called slacked out, which is like basically de-thawed and put in the refridge section. Our shelf life will be a lot shorter. In their freezer, your Kelp burgers can stay in your freezer for, I don't know, man, like probably until, we all drown from climate change, but it really long shelf life. And if you put them in the fridge, they get a little funky after like 3 days. I don't even know if I would eat it after like 24 hours, honestly, but it's because the kelp and the mushrooms, if you've ever like left, well, you don't like mushrooms, but if anyone listening has ever left mushrooms in their fridge for a couple of days, they get slimy, and kelp's very similar. So, we don't have a ton of shelf life there, which is why frozen's so good for us. But to your point, it's highly competitive.
Well, and I think, there's probably a lot you could add to those burgers, but given your desire to have, healthy, nutritious food,
yeah,
it's real, right? Like there's
everything's so nothing's pre-cooked. A lot of veggie burgers on the market today are pre-cooked or pre-fried, and that gives them, even longer of a shelf life. Everything that we make is fresh and then frozen. So when you cook it in a pan, 8 minutes later, you're having like a very nice meal. And I think the frozen food section is evolving. And I think, how you and I grew up, I'm probably a little older than you, but I remember like lean cuisine and then like TV dinners and like all frozen food had just such a bad rep. And now you're starting to see like, really healthy products in the frozen food section, because it's actually a very, great way to keep food that lasts a long time. That's fresh. So we'll see.
Yeah, no, I just recently came across frozen avocados. And I was like, this is
weird.
And it is, there are times where it's not a bad option. Because
Okay, I'm into it because they go bad. Like it's like they have like 2 hours. I feel
yeah,
I check my
exactly.
avocados every day, and then I'll go back and I'm like, how are they all gone?
No, it's such a crisis all the time.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's for your avo toast, but for other times you might need an avocado. There's
Smoothies
definitely
and whatnot.
exactly, definitely some good. It's good to see what's going on in the freezer aisle, to be sure. What about, so when you're going to these, you obviously need to think about your packaging. Like, how do you think about packaging? Obviously, you're a sustainable brand, which does bring a lot of complexity into the packaging conversations, I'm sure.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think packaging is kind of the big white elephant in the room of the better for you food industry because, we're all talking about, being these great brands that are creating change in the world. And I would say, like, as I walk the aisles of shows like Expo West and East, like 90% of the brands that would call themselves better for you are not even using recyclable packaging. And a primary reason for that is cost. Until a company like Kraft or Mars, et cetera, pushes these brands into recyclable, we're never going to see the price drops we need as small brands. All of our packaging is either recyclable or compostable. And that's really important to our consumer. And so, we spend a bit more money on packaging and, tend to bake that into the price of the product, which makes it expensive. And it's always, a trade-off. Also, products sometimes don't have as great of a shelf life when you're using like post-consumer recycled materials. But what are we going to do? Like ship kelp burgers and styrofoam, like, so we have to pay more and level up and do the right thing. And hopefully that will pay off eventually.
Yeah, no, that's obviously really important and love to see more of that. We frankly need a change on that. And, I now heard like the oil and gas industry is like, well, you can't go without us, you need plastic. So there's definitely like this, like just this, they're like, well, they might switch to electric cars, but we got them on plastic. So it's always good to see innovation and change in that space.
Yeah. And, I don't necessarily think that plastic is evil. I think that there's a lot of hygienic reasons to use plastic, but I think like, what really pisses me off is like, if I'm buying like a vegan protein powder and there's a single scoop plastic thing in there, it's like, dude, like who has vegan protein powder and doesn't own a fucking spoon? Like that is unnecessary. And so I feel like we need to sort of fight back. Like I ordered these Dr. Prager's little frozen bites the other day and they were all individually wrapped. And I'm just like, it's decisions like that we have to really push against because, there's just better ways to do things. But, if I don't put a kelp burger that's frozen in plastic and I just ship it to you in a box, that's going to get bacteria on it and you're going to get sick. So, I think plastic does have its place, but being smart about it. And then the more bioplastics that we can look at, the better. So like you can make bioplastics out of kelp. Actually, there's an amazing,
they're primarily algae based, right?
Yeah, totally. There's an amazing company based in London called Notpla, like not plastic. And they had this, big press piece. They're doing ketchup packets made from kelp, which are, immediately biodegradable. And then at the London Marathon a couple of years ago, they had these little water pouches that were very cool. So as you're running by, you grab a water pouch, put the water in and throw it on the ground. It would dissolve. Because it's exactly that. It's like, why at every freaking sporting event do we need little plastic cups that are single use? It's getting rid of all the unnecessary plastic.
Yeah.
That we need to, it's straws maybe are not the issue, right? It's like it's a whole other layer to this issue that we need to examine.
Yeah, we're totally going through that we just have a statewide ban on plastic bags, and there's of course like also
Colorado is so freaking awesome. I mean, anything you guys can tax, you'll tax and legalize, from Airbnb to weed. I love it. I just think it's such a forward thinking state.
Yeah, we didn't make as big of a splash when we decriminalized mushrooms, but hey, we'll just move along. We'll find the next thing to make a splash with.
But we appreciate you for that.
We'll be the guinea pigs.
Oh yeah, it's gonna, trust me, we've all been the guinea pigs for many years. Mushrooms are safe.
Fair enough. So I want to be respectful of your time. I know it's a lot later on the East Coast. I did just want to bring up, you shared with me earlier that one of the communities you started is OMG CPG. Is that still around, and can people join?
Yeah, it's I'll put it in the chat, but it's OMG CPG, and it's on Facebook, and it's open to anyone in the CPG industry who wants to, give and take info. It's 2,000 plus people. It's really, really helpful.
Awesome. Well, again, want to be respectful of your time. So I know that it's late on the East Coast. So I'm so appreciative that you joined us.
Thank you so much for having me.
An awesome conversation. Yeah, and everyone try AKUA.
Thanks, Jake.
Thanks, Courtney.
Bye.